trying to make sure I have enough loads to keep everybody busy, but not too many loads that everybody's working long hours. So it's how our feed ordering system works for New Fashion Pork is when the grower calls in an order, that order gets sent down, and we make the feed based off of the order sheet that gets sent down. Some other production systems will have, they've got their said diets, they'll make them, they'll have them on hand, and whatever somebody needs, they'll pull from that. But to help with keeping everything connected together, we go off of the order that gets sent down.
Swine. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Swine It podcast. I'm your host, Trey Kellner, and today I'm super excited because I'm joined by Logan Tesch, the feed mill manager at the Round Lake location for New Fashion Pork. Logan, how are you today?
Not too bad. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Logan, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience to start with?
Thank you. My name is Logan Tesch, the feed mill manager here at the Round Lake location for New Fashion Pork. I've been in this role now with New Fashion for just over a year. When I came out of college at SDSU, I started with New Fashion Pork in a role of the feed mill process improvement specialist. So I floated between the 4 company mills, helped out where it was needed, trained under management to help fill in the roles if managers were gone or things like that. And then I rolled into the management role here at the mill. So I'm now overseeing mill that's putting out roughly 3,000 tons a week. Got about 6 drivers I'm in charge of, and all the ingredient handling, making the feed, and all the status to make sure we send out a quality product for the company.
Awesome. Thank you, Logan. So let's start big picture. There's some of our listeners that have never been to a feed mill, whether that's for biosecurity reasons or just haven't had the opportunity. So as concisely as you can, Logan, I know we could probably talk about this for 3 to 4 hours. Explain how a feed mill works and what your role is in overseeing that the objectives of the feed mill are accomplished.
So yeah, big picture, majority of all the swine diets in the Midwest contain a lot of corn. So we receive in corn, we grind it through we utilize roller mills here at the mill to grind it down. Then we add in other ingredients that we receive, including distillers, soybean meal, as well as a lot of amino acids, vitamins, packs, that all get combined together, gets mixed. If we have fats that are included, those also get added in the mixer. And then that finished product ends up on a truck, and then that truck delivers it to the site. So that's a very big picture of what happens here, but there's a lot of minor things that go into it a lot. And with this mill, it is all automated. So we get orders that come in, we tell the computers what it's got to do, and then it takes off through all the various scales and processes built into the mill.
Yeah, awesome, Logan. That was very concisely done. I'm impressed. So let's also start big picture. As a swine nutritionist and accountable partner for our own feed mill, I'm often surprised sometimes on how little focus the feed mill level gets and how it can greatly affect the value of a pork producer's checkbook. Can you talk about how valuable a feed mill, a proper management and proper oversight can positively influence the bottom line? And at the same point in time, if it's not well maintained, if it's not invested in, if it has poor management, how it can negatively impact pork producers' bottom line?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, the corn being the largest ingredient in the diets for swine rations is that we focus on micron size, or when we're rolling it through the roller mills, what that looks like coming out. Are we having big chunks? Is it small, really fine? There's a window that we're shooting for here at this mill is about a 550 micron. Obviously, as you get smaller, it's more utilized by the animal, but we have issues with flowability. The bigger you get, you're not more utilizing it, but it flows a lot better. And I am not the nutritionist to tell you what the dollars are associated with each micron, but that has a big impact on there. The other thing we focus on is making sure everything is getting weighed up correctly. So as I said, it's very automated here, but like anything that's mechanical, something can go wrong. We've had issues where scales are inaccurately weighing in up ingredients. So then you're starting to have some shrink, or you're having more included. It starts to affect how the pigs perform based on that feed. So we're always double checking what our scales are, and actually on a weekly basis, what we do a test we weigh out the feed that we made, we weigh it on the empty truck, weigh it in the truck, and then we weigh that full truck to make sure we got that verification that I can guarantee I'm sending out what it said I made. And that way you're making sure that the grower is receiving exactly what he ordered. And then just overall making sure quality control, making sure distillers are nice and flowing. You don't have big clumps and stuff like that. Or the fat inclusion is being done correctly and your finished product is free flowing. And that's where a lot of things in the feed mill roll around is flowability. As I tie in like what the nutritionist aspect is to this, whatever formulation product they can use to make a diet, they can say anything goes in. But what the mill is actually able to produce, everything is able to go to such a minute number, but everything can only be achieved if the mill can do it. So like I've got on my micro scale, I can weigh in within 1/10 of a pound. But if in formulation, it might be pulled in for 1/2 pound per ton. And so my ability to correctly weigh up those ingredients is all based upon the level of sensitivity that the scales and equipment at the mill can handle. So that's kind of a biggest thing, is what the formulations are kind of dictates, and the feed mill has feedback to the nutritionist based on what is able to be done in the mill to both be efficient and accurate. And that's another piece with the feed mill, is the efficiency standpoint, being able to utilize the drivers, the mill staff that you have in a certain time frame to get feed out the door, so we're not all working boats and boats and boats and loads of overtime hours to try and keep everything flowing very well.
Explore MetaFarms for all your livestock production data needs. Experience our integrated software platform offering complete operational visibility from breed to market. Utilize customizable dashboards for data analysis and benchmarking. MetaFarms mobile apps enable offline access, maximizing efficiency and enhancing profitability. Visit us today at MetaFarms.
Yeah, one term that you use there, Logan, in your answer that I want to describe for our listeners better, because sometimes it's a concept that we take for granted, but others might not understand, is shrink, right? So from receiving, to final delivery, what is shrink, right? First of all, and then second of all, Logan, what can you do to try to keep it as small as possible?
So my answer to the shrink is that basically, so you get set ingredient that comes in. Well, I'll just use distillers, for example. So we scale it coming in off the trailer. So we input that weight into our system. So I recognize, okay, I've got this. Well, then as it's weighing up that ingredient into the different rations, all of a sudden I get to the end and it says I'm like 200 pounds short. And that could have been a variable of scale didn't quite weigh something up right, or it was a variance, or was lost somewhere in the transition from the trailer all the way into the bin and out. And that's something we just account for through production. You start to look at some of the other minor ingredients that are heavy, like salt and limestone. Humidity and moisture can start to affect them as well. And then ways to help minimize that are making sure a lot of it rolls back to the scale aspect, is making sure scales are verified. We do that once a year with a third-party entity that comes in, does all of our scales, so that we can guarantee that what's being weighed is calibrated correctly and that we can guarantee it's correct.
Yeah. Thanks, Logan. So another thing in that answer you describe of, how much value can I get out of a feed mill or leave on the table of a feed mill is your corn micron size. So Logan, describe how often are you doing maintenance on your roller mills? How often are you changing those rollers? How often, are you doing analysis of your micron size? Explain that process to our listeners of how much time you spend on trying to get that correct each and every day.
So yeah, here at this mill, we're we go through a decent chunk of corn. A given day, I go through 15,000 bushel of corn. So that's a lot of corn that's going through them roller mills. So every day we grab samples from both of our roller mills and run them through a sift shaker to get our micron size test done every single day. We've also been utilizing some newer technologies with some handheld NIR to try and help kind of test back and forth to get a rough picture of what it looks like at the moment before we run it through the test. So that way I use that information. As I said, our window right now is around a 550 micron. With that variance, if I'm down to 520, getting up to 570, we're sitting in a pretty good window. It's once we start to get outside those ranges that I go make some adjustments to the roller mill, tightening up the bottom rolls, or if it's getting or my deviation starting to get wider, I might start tightening up the top rolls. With our throughput at this mill, working with our roller mill supplier, we've been doing roll changes right around every 12 months to 16 months, depending on how much corn you're running through those roller mills. And then we also, the daily maintenance, we have the luxury of an automatic greaser on our roller mill.
Oh, nice.
So as you think about it, we have they're triple rolls, so there's 6 rolls per each roller mill. So you start doing the math, all right, 6 rolls, 12 bearings, because 1 on each side, times 2 mills. It's a lot of bearings you'd have to grease. So luckily, this automatic greaser helps with the maintenance aspect to help ensure that roller mill is performing to its best ability.
Yeah, that's awesome, Logan. Okay, so I'm sure we've hit on a couple of these areas already, but from your chair as the manager, what are maybe the top 3 to 5 things that you focus on every day with your mill and your team to ensure that your objectives are accomplished?
So yeah, the biggest thing is trying to make sure I have enough loads to keep everybody busy, but not too many loads that everybody's working long hours. So it's how our feed ordering system works for New Fashion Pork is when the grower calls in an order, that order gets sent down, and we make the feed based off of the order sheet that gets sent down. Some other production systems they've got their said diets, they'll make them, they'll have them on hand, and whatever somebody needs, they'll pull from that. But to help with keeping everything connected together, we go off of the order that gets sent down. So trying to we average to get our 3,000 ton a week. We run Monday through Friday. So we're shooting for about 600 ton a day. So then I'm trying to work with our ingredient haulers to make sure I'm getting enough ingredients. The largest ones that I'm in charge of are the bean meal and distillers. I try and make sure I got enough on hand, and then also trying to figure out our corn. At this mill, our corn storage is detached from the mill, so we truck it in. It's only half a mile away, but it's still some logistics to try and make sure we have enough corn on hand to keep making feed. The other thing is making sure overall just quality control, one with making feed in the mill, and 2 with making sure it's getting loaded correctly on trucks, and then it's also getting delivered at the site correctly. Here at New Fashion, we utilize iPads in our internal operating system pork office to help streamline the delivery process. Instead of just the old written in logs, the drivers are able to enter in what they got loaded, which bins they delivered to. So then it helps with the feedback getting sent that I look over is like, all right, did that all fit? Did they have to find another home for that feed? And more or less just make sure they went to the right site with that delivery. And over the years with New Fashion, we've taken a lot of the precautions to try and help make it all simplistic so you don't have those issues of showing up at the wrong site. We've got identifications at the sites, at the bin, that matches up with the load sheet that the driver's got. And other things of that nature that I'm in help to oversee and in charge of is the routine maintenance. As with everything that's running and sending a lot of tons through this place, a lot of things get worn out or just that you have to keep an eye on are belts, bearings, chains on conveyors, cups and belts on legs. A lot of those things that we have a system as well that helps. So like every 2 weeks, it prints off a report. These are the bearings that you have to go grease and things of that nature. So we stay on top of the maintenance so that way it doesn't snowball into a big effect. Obviously, them still happen, and it's just a wonderful day when that arrives. But the preventative maintenance is a big aspect of the mill to try and help make sure everything streamlines through. So then that way, as long as all the equipment is working, everybody in the mill and all the trucks can keep on rolling and keep the efficiency going.
Yeah, that's awesome, Logan. One thing that I'd like you to touch on is the people aspect. And let's start first with safety. Logan, what safety, protocols or training sessions do you have involved with your team to make sure that your operators and then your drivers are, safely, making and delivering feed?
So with company-wide, we've got monthly safety trainings that we sit down, present the safety item there. Otherwise, in general, with the guys in the mill, we always got the hot work permits, the confined spaces. If we're ever having to do anything with that, we've got those documents and the training that goes along with it to make sure everybody's safe in any kind of environment. Closed-toed shoes that are seal-toed or composite-toed to make sure in the event that there's something you're carrying things heavy, you've got that extra added protection. And then the same thing with the drivers. Biggest thing with the drivers revolves around the winter time as the road conditions start to get worse or poor, making sure we're paying attention with the weather and good communication as a team in general is like, all right, we're starting to get really bad out here. All right, what needs to get out the door, let's get it out now, and everything else we'll evaluate after the storm is through. And just overall, just trying to make sure everything's going down the road correctly, and if there's any accidents or road construction that we're planning ahead to avoid so guys aren't getting stuck in situations out in the road that would create potential issues.
Another thing, Logan, that we were talking about before the call is the lack of people talent within the feed mill industry. There are tons of animal science and pre-vet students at our college campuses currently. There are very few feed science or feed manufacturing students. And even at the training level, right, there are very few training opportunities to train mill operators, feed truck drivers, et cetera. So from your perspective, how big of an issue is this and how impactful is it? And then also, do you have any ideas to fix it?
So, and then this pertains a lot to like my personal experience. So when I was at SDSU, I did an animal science and ag business double major. And at one point in time, like a lot of animal science students are like, I want to go be a nutritionist. And then you start looking at all those extended years of education on top of that. But the funny thing is you have the nutritionist, but the thing that goes hand in hand with that is the feed mill. And there's just not a whole lot of exposure in undergraduate classes. I think I had one feeds class that we got to visit a mill that was, but that was my only exposure in the classroom. I got my exposure through an internship with Christensen Farms in their mill in Sleepy Eye. And that's where I fell in love with feed milling and the ability of all the different aspects that go along. And so then there's also some graduate level classes. I know Iowa State, Kansas State have a mill management or mill master's course. But when you look at the people that you need to fill, the mill operators, assistant managers, managers, there's not a whole lot of exposure and or even training just in general, as you mentioned. And the thing with the feed mills is that there's a lot of different technologies and different operating systems. So you can't just have like a training that hits across the board. This is how you make feed at every single mill. Everything is different, but the overall awareness, I guess I would put it, is the thing that's in the younger generation would be awesome to have just as general exposure, whether it was like, these are the different things that go along, because as we've mentioned before, some people just think feed mill, a couple ingredients get thrown together on a truck and shows up at my barn, and just trying to help create that exposure, whether it is through an internship opportunity like I had, even if it is just a 1 credit or 2 credit class at a college level that just kind of helps talk about all the things that we've talked about today, the preventative maintenance, micron size, and just all the different aspects that go into the operations of a mill are the biggest thing. A lot of the other mills that are out there, it's been guys that have just kind of started working there. It was just kind of a trades job, and they just worked and they learned on the go. But now as we position the mills with the age of technology, there's a lot more technology that's going on, and automation, computers, and screens. And that takes a little bit of a learning curve for some of these individuals that were either just push buttons at mills to get used to how those operating systems work.
Yeah. So Logan, I'd like to echo and amplify your comments. I'd say anyone that has the ability like we do, that has, feed mill access or management or ownership, whatever, have an internship program. Get kids excited. It's not the biggest deal about that they understand WIM or repeat or beta raven or easy or anything like that. It's understanding the process and getting them hooked and understanding that this can be a great career. I mean, feeding pigs is awesome. And yeah, there's some winter months where there's challenges and there's some maintenance issues, which is challenges. But, today's modern mill, as you said, Logan, requires this unique skill set of computer expertise and mechanical expertise. And that's a tough combination to find. So we're going to have to manufacture that kind of on our own. So if you have that ability, please do so. I think it's the best thing that we can all do for each other. So, yeah. Logan, is there anything that you would like to highlight that we haven't covered yet about overseeing a feed mill or getting the most value out of a feed mill, or anything from your perspective that you want to share?
I guess I kind of highlight what I did previously with my old position with New Fashion and the feed mill process improvement specialist, and just kind of thinking big picture with the mills. And we talk about efficiencies, and that's where dollars can be added back to the company when you can be making feed where there's no slowdowns. You can maximize your trucks so the mixer's always going and trucks are always running. That adds up after a while once you start thinking about how many labor hours are accounted for with running longer and being able to look ahead. So as I mentioned, we make feed based on orders. Well, when I have less than a 24-hour notice on orders coming through, that impacts how I can plan the next day for the drivers. And being able to overall just plan in general helps make everything so much easier in regards to ingredient management, drivers management, and things of that nature. So there's a lot of aspects and things that can be improved upon to increase the efficiency at outside the mill level and in the mill level with VFDs or variable frequency drive motors on our augers to help accurately hit the weights without trying to have a 20-pound variance on limestone. I can be within 2 pounds. And there's things like that all incorporate together as we oversee and look at the efficiencies of a feed mill.
Yeah, that's awesome, Logan. Thanks for sharing.
It's time for our famous three. An animal nutrition technology company offering innovative products and new applications for the swine industry. The combination of AB Vista enzymes, technical services, and nutrition expertise provides the industry with new opportunities to further improve production efficiencies. Fiber is receiving renewed interest due to its influence on the microbiome, and AB Vista has brought together research experts to discuss the industry's knowledge of fiber functionality and to introduce a Stimbiotic, targeted to improve fiber digestion. To request access, contact NAM at abvista.com. That's NAM at abvista.com.
All right, I have 4 final questions for you that are a little bit fun and kind of put you on the spot so our audience can better get to know you. First of all, if you had a blank check, what would be the biggest issue that you would fix in your feed mill tomorrow?
So in my feed mill, which I actually give credit to New Fashion Pork because they're working on fixing this one. But as I mentioned, the corn situation is detached from the mill, so we're hauling it in. But this fall, we're adding in a new ingredient leg solely for corn with a future expansion for bins attached on the mill side. So if I could write the check and save the company some money, there we go. I'd get it all done in one shot.
That's awesome, Logan. Do you have a favorite pork recipe?
I myself am just kind of a classic guy. I like a grilled pork chop. Throw a little bit of different I kind of play around with some seasonings every once in a while, but especially now that we're rolling into this summertime weather, putting a pork chop on the grill, that's my go-to.
Yeah. Speaking of summertime weather, now that we're coming out of the doldrums of winter, what's your favorite outdoor summer activity that you look forward to the most?
I'm looking forward to get in my garden and get things going. When I was little, I always had a garden, and now that I moved to town since I started with New Fashion, so my garden's a little bit smaller than it used to be, but I still try and max them little garden boxes out to see what I can get.
That's awesome, Logan. All right, last question, and then we'll stop this painful inquisition for you. What's the biggest hurdle that you've overcome in your career that you're the most proud of, Logan?
I would say the aspect of rolling into management. So, I mean, I went to a 4-year university. They teach you all these management classes. I got hired in was started as technically a management level role. But it wasn't until I actually got in this spot of a mill manager where I had to learn on the go true management, how to manage people, how to manage equipment, and things of that nature that I had, honest to God, no clue what I was doing. But it was a lot of asking questions, being humble, and having conversations to better improve myself. And I can say I'm a heck of a better manager now a year into this than when I started.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing your experience, Logan. I sure enjoyed this conversation, and sure our listeners did too. Hope you have a great summer, and we wish you the best. And with that concludes another episode of the Swine It podcast. Check out our podcasts. They come out every Tuesday.